Hi, everyone. We are back on the sidelines of the Africa Tech Policy Week, and this is the day for the Kenya Internet Governance Forum, or KEIGF. Today, this time I have the pleasure of hosting my good friend and sister, Grace Githaiga. Grace is, oh my God, my apologies, Dr. Grace Gitaiga. We must give you the respect you deserve. You took a couple of years to get that done.
Correct.
So, folks, Grace is the convener and CEO of KICTANet. KICTANet is the foremost policy think tank this part of the world. And I have to say this is home ground conversation because Grace is co-convener of KICTANet and I am the chairperson of the board of trustees for KICTANet. Daktari, karibu sana. Welcome to Alitalkstech. So, talk to us. Talk to us about Grace first, and then let's zoom in into what KEIGF is all about. And let's also speak to the Africa Tech Policy Summit, which is in its inaugural year. Over to you.
Okay. Grace is the CEO of KICTANet. Like you have said, a multi-stakeholder think tank that works in ICT policy and regulation and works through 4 pillars. That's research, policy advocacy, capacity building, and stakeholder engagement. And our work revolves around cybersecurity, cyber hygiene, data protection, and privacy. And then we have cross-cutting themes, and that's women, mainstreaming women in technology, as well as people living with disabilities. Grace has been the convener at KICTANet. And has actually took over as co-convener in 2016 and then 2019 full convener. And I have seen the growth of KICTANet from an email list to a full-fledged organization that does full-fledged programs, that engages with partners and donors, that offers mentorship programs to young people, that is constantly catalyzing ICT policy, that is constantly bringing people together to engage in policy debates. And so that really is me. Previously, actually, my background is in media.
Yep.
I worked as a media, I think, for over 10 years.
Okay.
Where I was helping establish community radios in different parts of Africa. But my pet project was in East Africa, where I did that with marginalized communities. And then, before that, I actually worked now as a full-fledged media person.
Okay.
And then I turned...
As what? A journalist?
Yes, I was actually broadcasting on a radio producer.
Interesting.
That's what, my passion. Every time I go to the studio, I just feel like that is where I belong. And so you can see that intersection of media and technology in the program that we work together with KBC, Take on Tech, where again, I started, breaking down technology concepts and debates into non-tech language so that people could start understanding that technology does affect them and they need to be concerned where technology policies are supposed, in particular, when there's a call to public participation, that their voice is very important, because we can't even say, we are no longer saying technology is the future. Technology
is now.
Is now, and will be the future in a while, because we're already seeing how artificial intelligence is coming in a big way, has come in a big way. We do not know what next, but obviously technology is so dynamic that there practically seems to be a new issue every other
day.
And for me, technology is so exciting because there's never a dull day, and you really are never doing routine work. So even when you think, okay, I need to sync, in and learn this area, a new component in that area checks, and you have to start realizing, so how do I fit myself in here? How do I get to understand this? And how does this new or emerging technology fit into what we are doing?
Interesting. So, for my viewers, what is KICTANet?
This is really the policy think tank.
Okay.
In this, of course, when it started, it targeted Kenyans, but it has grown to do regional work, to do global work. For example, we support programs that actually are global, and therefore our niche is really policy analysis, policy conversations, policy influence, policy catalyzing, and therefore we have realized that that's an area that constantly requires the relevant authorities to be reminded that even as they do some of these things, we need a policy that frames or grounds whatever it is that we do. And therefore, KICTANet, to ensure that we are constantly doing that with a freshness, we are always nurturing new voices.
Yeah.
New voices.
I saw like today in the plenary session in the morning, you asked who is new to IGF. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that quite a number of people, and most of them young, who are coming up, which is great.
Agree, and I think there's already a generational shift even into tech engagement, into civic engagement. Like you saw yesterday, we had that conversation with the Gen Zs on the debate about kusalimiana and hash inject. And where do you draw the line between data protection and and
activism
and privacy? And so they were raising the issue of public figures really have no privacy when it comes to certain issues, that therefore they felt that they were genuine in injecting. Injecting means sharing that sometimes is very personal.
So basically what the Gen Z are saying is, if you feel the kitchen is too hot, get out of it.
Correct. But it's very important that we brought this. Again, this is one of the many things that KICTANet does, that
convening,
convening, but also catalyzing.
Yes.
Because we want this conversation to happen. And there were many, and they came and they gave their views. The Office of the Data Protection Commission was represented. The Ombudsman was represented. So they were able to listen. And for policy to be effective, you just have to really consider that different voices must be represented.
Correct.
And I think that goes, into one of Kenya's values in the Constitution, Article 10, that anyone making public policy must engage those concerned. And so that engagement is very critical, because at KICTANet we talk about multi-stakeholders.
Yes.
Actually, that is a favorite term for us.
Yes,
and
it's at the core of engaging.
Yes, that we are saying when people sit at the table, they bring in different roles and responsibilities.
And perspective.
And this multi-stakeholderism is about not who is more senior. It is about what is your contribution and what do you contribute to shape the policies that affect the people. And one of the things that we have to remember, Ali, is that ICT regulation, ICT policy is not your normal water, trees, roads, regulation. This one requires multi-stakeholder engagement, because including the person who just engages at home is a stakeholder.
Kabisa.
When it comes to
Kabisa,
internet.
kabisa.
Then we have the internet going across borders. And if it goes across the borders, how are people affected, and how are they communicating? And so you can't come up and say, this is how we are going, this is how we are going to legislate on this aspect, or this is how we are going to do it. You have to listen to the people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, for me, policy work is fascinating. I know it may come across as boring to people, but it's at the essence of citizens saying you will govern according to the way we want you to govern, not the way you should govern. And that involves making sure that any regulation that comes in is driven by the right policies. So, I know we work together as at KICTANet, but I would like you to just sort of speak to my audience about the process of policy making and why this is so crucial, and the role KICTANet has played in many engagements. I mean, today morning you said there is almost absolutely nothing you can talk about when it comes to tech policy that KICTANet is not involved in this country. So let's pick out some of these examples that are crucial for the development and health of our tech ecosystem.
Yeah. So one of the things at KICTANet, we do recognize the need for regulation.
Yes.
Because regulation is not necessarily bad.
Yes.
It allows us to respect each other and to know where the limits are. However, that regulation for us must be balanced with our rights, as provided for in our Bill of Rights in the constitutions. So, we still, there are issues of freedom of expression,
Correct.
especially freedom of association. We have freedom to our privacy, etc. And so even as regulation comes in, then there's need to balance with our rights.
Absolutely.
Secondly, KICTANet pushes for regulation that has public interest. And this is where now the voice comes in. Different stakeholders, what are they saying? And whoever is making this policy, is that person listening? So when you talk of what KICTANet does in policy making, one of the things is that we have always responded to the call for public participation. And public participation is really critical, even if you're just going to say one thing. And you do a written memorandum, because the different bodies now have, are required, have that constitutional requirement to actually call for that. And what we do, we actually do a memo responding to that call and saying, so we usually, we will say, this is our concern, this is why we are concerned, and this is what we are suggesting.
So it's not just saying we are concerned, no, but providing.
You provide the text. It's very, very
context,
important.
yes.
Written text. Yes. Very important. And you do in a matrix that article this, article 1 dash this.
This is the article.
This is what it says.
This is why we don't agree with it. And this is what we suggest.
Yes. Wow. Including sometimes providing alternative texts. So at least you need to explain why you think it is not right there. And some of those articles, I think you need to be very strong sometimes, because the regulator also can come back and say, or whoever is making law can come back and say, why are you disagreeing with this article? And it doesn't necessarily offend the constitution or public policy. And so you have to be very clear in how you voice. Yes. So once we do that and we send our memo, for us at KICTANet, we also put it on our website.
Yes.
And we share with our stakeholders so that it remains out there.
For posterity.
For posterity and for us to see that we were counted. There's also the other element of where Kenyans like saying kujituma.
Yes.
So sometimes we will realize there's something that is, we think can be strengthened, an element of law, and we just analyze and we share with the relevant body that works on that. So I think it's very important, number one, when there's a call for public participation, to show up.
Showing up is very important.
Very important. Secondly, be memorable. Share that memo.
Yes.
And even if you're just going to say one thing that can be memorable.
Absolutely.
And third, don't get discouraged because, again, policy making, advocacy can be very slow. Sometimes it takes years. So you get discouraged. Don't be discouraged because ultimately you will still
Absolutely.
you'll still see the result. And that's why we recognize that fatigue. We call it the public participation fatigue. And therefore that is why every year we want to bring in fresh voices that have a lot of energy
To work on
and they can continue that process. So we just push them, we support them, we train them, and so that process, there's consistently engagement.
Fantastic. So I mean, today is a busy day. Yeah. And I really want to thank you for accepting me to hijack you. But in closing, I want us to talk a bit about Kenya Internet Governance Forum, what it's all about. This is all part of bringing in new voices and how we have now, as an organization, decided this needs to be the flagship event of the Africa Tech Policy Summit.
Okay, I will say that the Kenya IGF is really, again, a multi-stakeholder platform that, again, brings people together to discuss tech policy issues in a very honest manner and in an equal footing. I must say that it's a very good platform because this is where new policy ideas are actually dialogued. And somehow people dialogue and they agree, they disagree, but somehow an issue is also put onto people's agenda, and they are able then to start saying, oh, this is really a concern, and this is something that actually requires some policy attention. So it's not policy making, but it's very good because it allows for very honest conversations among the different stakeholders.
And the essence of it is multi-stakeholder.
The multi-stakeholderism and the honest conversations that take place and ultimately continue to catalyze different areas of the tech ecosystem. So that is one thing. Now, why the Africa Tech Policy Summit? Again, this was an idea that was decided by different stakeholders. That our strength, like I said, our DNA really is pushing for rights, respecting policies in ICTs. And we have been doing that in different, we do it in this forum, we do it in different forums. And we decided, why don't we bring all these policy conversations under one umbrella? And therefore, you have seen that within that, we have collaborated with different partners,
organization.
organizations, not just in this country, but out of, in African countries, and even beyond Africa, just to have some of these conversations that require a policy attention or require people to discuss policy concerns. So really, again, the DNA is policy concerns.
Completely. Great. So, Grace, asante sana. Thank you so much for this time. I've had several interesting, engaging conversations. As I said, this is our Tech Policy Week. Yeah. To close this, speak to my audience about our Internet School of Governance, or KeSIG, Kenya School of Internet Governance, something I'm really proud of.
Yes. So, like I said, we realized as KICTANet that sometimes policy advocacy can be slow and it can be discouraging. But when I took over as co-convener in 2016, again during the Kenya IGF, one of those initial IGFs that I participated in, and we asked the same question that I asked today. So can we see who are the new voices? And of course, there were many, many new voices. And during our breaks and engagement, they did come to me and say, we would really want to learn how to, engage in policy making.
Amazing.
And an idea was born. So how are we going to do it?
Yes.
We came back as KICTANet, the trustees, and discussed how that would be done. And we agreed we were going to do it through training, a formal training. And we were going to call that course the Kenya School of Internet Governance. And this is where we introduce them to internet governance from scratch. We give them, now it's developed into a 3-week. Initially, when we started, it was 3 days. Now it's a 3-week course. So every year, there is a new component that comes in on what is emerging technology and how they can engage and how they can learn. And we have the Kenya School of Internet Governance, or KeSIG. So it's an annual
event.
It's an annual training that just happens once a year. But we have seen a lot of demand for it. Initially, we used to get funding for it, but I think from 2 or 3 years ago, we couldn't get funding for it. And we just decided, you know what, we're going to be bold. If this course is interesting, people will pay for it. And we just tested and said, okay, indicate how much you can pay. And we were surprised because
we even give people the option.
Yes, yes. So there is demand, and because it's a good thing, we still get people doing it and paying for it.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's the platform. It's like I think we would call it like a rite of passage, because then it moves you from that child who doesn't know policy
to somebody.
Yes, so that you start now. And
how many have we trained to date?
I think around 300. I don't have the specific number.
Around 300. This year, how many are going to graduate?
I think there were 33, but they all paid up.
All of them?
All of them are paid up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gigi, great work. I'm so proud of being part of KICTANet. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Grace Gitaiga. I tell Grace her poise and her leadership is very understated, but extremely effective. KICTANet today is a colossal when it comes to tech policy. And we continue to grow as an organization. And Grace, asante sana for spending a few minutes with me to discuss tech policy.
Asante sana for inviting.
Now I have to prepare for my fireside chat.
All right.
Okay, asante sana.
Good luck.
Great.
Okay.